welcome to Chore Chapters, because everyday tasks need good company. I'm Leo, and with me as always, we have got Luna.
Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Today we've got a thrilling and interesting story lined up, so grab your headphones and let's dive straight into the story.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're pulling back the layers on a true crime story that's really as tragic as it is complex, the case of Sony Millbrook. When you look at the raw facts of this story, what's the first thing that really jumps out at you? What tells you this is going to be more than just a headline?
Well, for me, it's the sheer audacity of the crime and how it was concealed. I mean, we're talking about a missing mother of 5.
Mm-hmm.
Her body found in, well, just the most unexpected and frankly disturbing place, a motel room.
A motel room that had been used afterward.
Exactly. Cleaned and rented out multiple times since she disappeared. So our goal for you today is to go beyond that initial shock, to really meticulously sift through the sources, the police reports, court documents, witness testimonies,
Right.
and truly understand the pattern of events, the evidence that built the case, and maybe what profound implications this story holds for all of us.
Okay, so the first chilling piece of this puzzle takes us back to a budget lodge motel in Memphis and a mother who just didn't pick up her children from school.
Yeah. Sony Millbrook, 28 years old, devoted mother of 5, reported missing late January 2010.
Because she didn't collect her kids on January 27th. That was the trigger.
That was the alarm bell. Family told police she'd been staying there, room 222. Motel staff last saw her in that room on that same day, the 27th.
And then the room was just locked.
Found locked by late January, yeah. All her personal belongings still inside, apparently because of unpaid rent.
But no Sony.
No Sony. And a really striking detail here is the sheer length of time her disappearance remained a mystery. And, what was happening, or rather not happening, in that room during that period.
How long are we talking?
It wasn't until March 15th, 2010, so nearly 2 months later.
2 months. Wow.
Yeah. A persistent, sickening foul odor finally prompted the motel staff to call detectives about room 222.
And that's when they found her.
That's when they made the gruesome discovery. Sony Millbrook's body, stuffed inside the metal bed frame, underneath the box springs and mattress.
Under the bed people had been sleeping on.
Unbelievably, yes. Police later revealed the room had been cleaned numerous times and rented out approximately 5 times since January 28th.
5 times? That's hard to comprehend.
It really is. The body was in a state of moderate decomposition, the reports say, and there were disturbing signs of deliberate concealment.
Like what?
Indentations on her body from the box springs. 2 areas where the wood on the box springs was broken, suggesting force was used to get her in there.
Okay.
And then a coaxial cable wrapped around her neck, later identified as the murder weapon, and even dryer sheets placed near her legs, and a towel by her head.
Trying to mask the smell.
A deliberate, calculated effort. It points to someone methodical, almost clinical, trying to hide the crime and evade detection. That audacity, renting the room out, it speaks volumes about the perpetrator.
So as we delve deeper, the true heartbreak really emerges when we look at the history here. This wasn't just a sudden, isolated event, was it?
Absolutely not. This next part, it sort of lays out a terrifying blueprint of escalation. Sony Millbrook and Lakeith Moody, he was the father of 4 of her children, known as Kiki.
Right.
They began their relationship way back in 1998. But by 1999, friends and family, like her friend Pamela Payton, who knew her since 8th grade, were already noticing bruises, scratches on Sony's body.
So right from the start.
Pretty much. And Moody's destructive behavior wasn't just physical, it was deeply controlling. Vandalizing her apartment, cutting furniture, taking clothes, smashing the TV, slinging food all over the walls.
Okay.
And leaving these chilling messages like, Kiki loves you, written in red nail polish on the mirror after tracking her place.
Oh, wow.
Sony's own mother, Christine Bennett, she saw the bruises too. Heard how Moody ran her daughter off the road once. This wasn't just random anger, it was systematic, chipping away at her safety, her autonomy.
And the specific incidents of violence, they're incredibly graphic. They reveal a terrifying pattern.
They really do. Take October 31st, 2000 Halloween. Sony reported to Sergeant Eric Jensen that Moody punched her, kicked her, choked her until she was unconscious.
Unconscious.
Yeah. Pamela Payton saw her in the ER, knocked out front tooth, scratches on her neck, red eye. Sony told her then she wanted to leave Moody.
But she couldn't, or didn't.
It seems not. Later that same year, apparently after finding birth control pills, Moody reportedly beat Sony so badly. Well, Sony told Peyton it led to her needing hospital care for a miscarriage.
Oh my God.
And it just kept escalating.
Well, October 6th.
2008. Sony texts her employer, Leslie Young, saying she's being held hostage, beaten by Moody, asking for help, giving her address.
She texted her boss for help.
Yeah. Police had to force entry, found Sony crying, bruised. Moody fled by jumping out a back window.
He ran.
He ran. And Sony told the officers then that he'd tied a baby blanket around her throat until she passed out and explicitly threatened to kill her later.
A direct death threat.
Yes. And then again, March 10th, 2009. Officers respond to another domestic disturbance. Sony's hysterical. Says Moody slapped her, pulled her hair, chased her, threatened to kill her again.
And this time she signed a hold harmless statement.
She did, and was taken to a shelter. But that statement, for you the listener, it essentially means she was waiving the police's liability if she chose not to pursue charges. It's just a stark example of the complex pressures victims face, even when they're reaching out.
It really is. And it raises another important question, though. Sony did try to get legal protection at one point, right? Which highlights just how challenging that can be.
She did try. October 9, 2008, she requested an order of protection against Moody, clearly fearing for her life.
But it didn't go through.
It was dismissed because she failed to appear for the hearing just 2 weeks later, on October 23rd. And this just underscores the immense hurdles in leaving an abusive relationship. You know, the fear, maybe economic dependence, the sheer emotional exhaustion. It often combines to prevent victims from following through, even with legal steps.
It's heartbreaking. So let's trace Moody's actions immediately after Sony's disappearance. And crucially, this is before her body was even found. What details start to paint a picture of what really happened?
Yeah, this is where Moody's behavior really speaks volumes. So, January 27, 2010, the day Sony was last seen. Nathaniel Lewis, the housekeeping manager at the Budget Lodge, he spoke to Sony through her room window. That was between 11:00 and 11:30 a.m.
Okay.
But then, later that same afternoon, between 2:00 and 2:30 p.m., Lewis is speaking to Moody through the same window.
So Moody was definitely there after Sony was last seen talking to staff.
Precisely. And his actions right after weren't just coincidental. They look like a clear attempt to, well, control Sony's assets, dispose of evidence, mislead investigators. It strongly suggests, a consciousness of guilt.
Like what specifically?
Okay, financial control. Video surveillance from February 1st, 2010, 11:38 a.m. It clearly shows Moody using Sony Millbrook's EBT card at a convenience store.
Her food stamp card?
Yes. Buying orange juice with the food stamp part and withdrawing $185 cash from the EBT side. And court records stipulated EBT transactions on her card happened between January 25th and February 1st. So Moody was using her funds almost immediately after she vanished.
And his claims about where he was during that time, they fell apart too, didn't they?
Completely. Moody claimed he last saw Sony on January 26th and then said he lived in her car until February 2nd.
Living in her car.
That was his story. But hotel records from America's Best Hotel show he checked in there on February 1st, 2010 for one night, paid cash, even provided his ID, directly contradicts his claim.
So he wasn't living in the car, he was checking into another hotel.
Right. And then there's the disposal of her belongings. On February 3rd, Sergeant Michael Brown recovered a DVD player and Sony's wallet with her EBT cards and ID from Moody's relatives.
How do they get them?
Moody's cousin Larry Gray testified. Said Moody visited him around January 24th to pick up a borrowed DVD player, one with a long gray cord, remember that detail.
Well, coaxial cable.
Potentially linked, yes. And Gray said Moody later gave him Sony's wallet and that same DVD player to take to Moody's mother. These look like deliberate actions to hide his connection to Sony's things.
And then there was a crucial procedural detail, Moody's initial arrest. How did that actually happen?
Well, on February 2nd, Officer Kevin Clark located Sony's car, a red Mitsubishi. Moody was inside.
So they arrested him for car theft.
Yes, initially for car theft. But critically, he was also held on an unrelated federal gun charge.
Oh, okay.
And this unrelated charge turned out to be pivotal. It gave law enforcement the legal justification to detain him longer, search Sony's car, and gather crucial evidence that eventually linked him directly to her disappearance and ultimately her murder.
So that gun charge was kind of a lucky break for the investigation.
In a way, yes. Without that initial arrest and hold, Moody might have been released, potentially remained at large, and that would have significantly complicated the entire investigation.
It really is a testament to, meticulous police work, how investigators were able to painstakingly build this case. Drawing on this mosaic of forensic, testimonial, and digital evidence, let's start with the science, the forensic evidence.
Yeah, the autopsy performed by Dr. Karen Chancellor, the Shelby County medical examiner, was absolutely critical. She definitively determined Sony's cause of death was asphyxiation by ligature strangulation, ruled a homicide,
Ligature strangulation.
and her testimony was powerful. She explained this method requires a minimum of 2 to 3 minutes of continuous pressure on both carotid arteries. Unconsciousness happens in mere seconds, but death takes minutes of sustained pressure.
So it wasn't quick, it was prolonged.
Exactly. This sustained act provided strong support for the prosecution's claim of premeditation. It indicated a deliberate intent to kill, not just a sudden, impulsive act of rage.
And the murder weapon itself was right there at the scene, that coaxial cable. How did that connect back specifically to Moody?
Well, the cable was found wrapped around Sony's neck, extending under one arm, around her breast, partly on her back. And remember, Larry Gray's testimony.
About the DVD player with the long gray cord.
Precisely.
Huh.
Moody picking up a borrowed DVD player with a long gray cord just days before Sony's disappearance. That created a strong, albeit circumstantial link to the type of cable used.
Okay. And DNA.
Yes, DNA evidence was crucial too. Agent Jessica Marquez, a forensic biology expert from the TBI crime lab, found Lakeith Moody's DNA profile in a swab taken from under Sony Millbrook's fingernails.
Suggesting a struggle.
Strongly suggests a struggle, yes.
Yeah.
Furthermore, the coaxial cable itself yielded DNA, a partial profile matching Sony from 2 areas. And then on the middle section of the cord, a minor contributor, male DNA profile was found.
Moody's.
It was insufficient to definitively identify him. However, Agent Marquez testified she could not exclude Moody as that minor contributor. She noted similarities to his known DNA profile.
So, not a 100% match on the cable, but couldn't rule him out, and his DNA was under her nail.
Exactly. This constellation of evidence, the type of cable, his DNA under her nails, his possible DNA on the cable, powerfully linked Moody to both the victim and the murder weapon.
It's interesting, too, you mentioned earlier there were other prints found. That sometimes investigations hit these sort of potential detours.
Indeed. 3 fingerprints lifted from bedpole number 4 of the bed frame belonged to someone else, an individual named Anthony Franklin. Sergeant Brad Webb did initially pursue him as a suspect.
But it didn't lead anywhere.
Well, the timing of when those prints were left was unknown. And the court documents don't indicate this line of inquiry ever led to charges against Franklin. It just highlights the complexities. Not every piece of evidence found at a scene directly points to the perpetrator. Sometimes there are these initial diversions before the full picture comes into focus.
Right. Beyond the science, the human element, the testimonial evidence, the voices of the case were equally vital, weren't they? From hotel staff to family and friends.
Absolutely crucial. Nathaniel Lewis, the housekeeping manager. He was the last person known to have spoken with Sony alive on January 27th. And his persistence about that foul odor is what ultimately led to discovering her body.
He kept noticing it.
He did. Then there was Seven Jefferson, the hotel security guard. He witnessed Moody's erratic behavior, yelling obscenities at Sony just days before on January 22nd. Her yelling from room 222 the next day, which actually led to Moody being removed from the premises temporarily.
So there was conflict right there at the motel.
Yes. And even Edwina Hankins, a volunteer probation officer visiting the motel for other reasons, she also noted that very foul smell coming from room 222 back on March 2nd. These individuals helped establish the timeline, the location, and the presence of both Sony and Moody there.
And the testimony from Sony's inner circle must have been incredibly powerful, painting that picture of the long-standing abuse.
Devastatingly powerful. Christine Bennett, Sony's mother, she was the one who initiated the missing person report. Her testimony about Moody's prior abuse was vital. Pamela Payton, the longtime friend, detailed that extensive history going all the way back to 1999.
And she was the last person to talk to Sony.
She was the last known person to speak with Sony before she disappeared. And she remembered a chilling detail. Sony saying she was pulling up to a hotel and, ominously, that she had something to tell Pamela.
Wow, never got the chance.
Never got the chance. Then Genus Rubin, the child care director, confirmed how consistent Sony was as a parent, making her failure to pick up her kids highly unusual, a huge red flag that something was gravely wrong.
Yeah.
And of course, various police officers testified, detailing Moody's documented history of domestic violence against Sony. Sergeant W.D. Merritt specifically noted Moody's deceptive statements about his and Sony's whereabouts right after his arrest.
So you have the physical evidence, the witness accounts of the abuse, the motel staff's timeline. Then there's the digital trail, a modern form of evidence that can be incredibly illuminating.
Absolutely. It filled in so many gaps. That video surveillance from February 1st undeniably showing Moody using Sony's EBT card, buying juice, withdrawing cash.
Using her money right after she's gone.
Exactly. And those stipulated EBT transactions happening between January 25th and February 1st just solidify that timeline of his financial control. And that text message Sony sent her employer back in 2008.
The one saying she was being held hostage.
Yes,
Yeah.
explicitly stating she was being held hostage, beaten by Moody, asking for help. That's direct, undeniable proof of the severity of the abuse, in her own words.
Right.
And finally, those hotel records from America's Best Hotel, directly contradicting Moody's alibi about living in Sony's car, showing he checked into room 126 on February 1st.
So it's a cumulative weight, isn't it?
Precisely. The cumulative weight of all this diverse evidence, from the tiny details of DNA to the decade-long patterns of behavior backed up by digital footprints, it just formed an undeniable narrative of guilt. It moved far beyond any single piece of evidence. It became this overwhelming, consistent picture.
So, with all this evidence meticulously gathered and presented, what was the final legal outcome for Lakeith Moody?
He was convicted of both first-degree premeditated murder and first-degree felony murder of Sony Millbrook. He received a life sentence.
A life sentence. And did his defense try to challenge that? What were their main arguments on appeal?
They did appeal, yes. Focused on three primary arguments. First, they argued the trial court made a mistake by allowing all that evidence about his extensive history of prior domestic violence against Sony.
Saying it was prejudicial.
Essentially, yes, unfairly prejudicial. Second, they claimed the evidence overall was insufficient to actually support the convictions. And third, a more procedural point, that the trial court should have merged the two convictions, premeditated and felony murder, into a single judgment for first-degree murder.
Okay. And how did the Court of Criminal Appeals respond to those challenges?
Well, the court ultimately affirmed both convictions. They found the evidence was more than sufficient. And crucially, they disagreed about the domestic violence history evidence.
They allowed it.
They ruled it was highly relevant, highly probative in legal terms of Moody's premeditation and intent. They explicitly found that the value of showing that pattern, the choking, the explicit death threats over many years outweighed any potential unfair prejudice.
Why was it so important for premeditation?
Because, as the court stated, it demonstrated Moody's hostility, malice, intent, and settled purpose to harm the victim. It showed this wasn't just a sudden flare-up. It helped establish that state of mind before the act. It transformed the perception from maybe impulsive to calculated in the eyes of the law.
So that history wasn't just background noise, it was central to proving the intent required for first-degree murder.
Exactly. And the manner of death itself, that ligature strangulation, needing 2 to 3 minutes of continuous pressure, even after unconsciousness, that was also key evidence pointing to deliberate intent, not sudden impulse.
Right.
And then all of Moody's actions after the murder, hiding the body, the dryer sheets, taking her car, using her EBT card, lying to police, all presented as further compelling evidence of premeditation and, importantly, consciousness of guilt.
So the conviction stood. What about the merging issue?
That was the only point the appeals court agreed on. It was procedural correction. They remanded the case only for the trial court to merge the two first-degree murder convictions into a single judgment for first-degree murder. It was a technicality, really. It didn't change his finding of guilt or his life sentence at all.
Understood. So this case, while just devastating, certainly offers significant insights into the judicial process, especially in domestic violence cases. And tragically, it highlights the immense difficulties victims face trying to escape these situations, like Sony's dismissed protection order or signing that hold harmless statement.
Absolutely. This deep dive into Sony Millbrook's case reveals, I think, a deeply troubling pattern of domestic violence that just escalated over a decade, culminating in murder.
Yeah.
But it also shows us how meticulous police work, combined with a really robust understanding of behavioral patterns and forensic science, can lead to justice, even when a perpetrator goes to such extreme lengths to conceal their crime.
Sony's story is such a stark reminder, isn't it, of the hidden struggles so many face and the critical importance of recognizing those signs of escalating violence. For you, the listener, we truly hope this deep dive has offered a clearer, maybe more thorough understanding of how all the various pieces of a complex criminal case like this are brought together to try and reveal the truth. And as you reflect on this, maybe a final thought to leave you with. This case really forces us to consider, If a decade of documented abuse, including explicit death threats, near fatal assaults, if that isn't a clear enough signal of escalating danger, what more could society as a whole really do to intervene before such patterns reach their tragic, irreversible conclusion?
Thanks so much for listening, everyone. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us out. Until next time, take care and keep your chores company.